It was an evening like any other at the Grand Oak, an upscale restaurant where the city's elite gathered for fine dining and whispered conversations about deals and dreams. The soft glow of the chandeliers above reflected off the polished marble floors, casting flickering shadows along the walls. The air was thick with the hum of quiet chatter, the clink of fine china, and the occasional laughter of old friends reconnecting. But amidst the luxury, a strange contrast lingered. A man in a simple gray polo shirt and casual slacks quietly sat at his usual corner table. His worn leather boots, scuffed from years of use, told a story of simplicity, of a man who didn't need the gilded trappings around him to feel whole. He wasn't concerned with impressing anyone. His eyes calm, watching the room as if observing a scene that only he truly understood. And yet, in this world of glitter and gold, there was one person who would see him as nothing more than an ordinary man. A man who didn't belong. Rachel, a young waitress, fresh from hospitality school, walked past the gleaming tables, her mind focused on the glamorous crowd. She hadn't noticed him at first, but then something in his stillness caught her eye. His outfit wasn't quite what she expected for a restaurant like this. He didn't fit the mold, and she felt the weight of judgment begin to stir inside her. Why would anyone wear such casual clothes here? She thought. Her gaze flickered to the other guests, with their designer suits and fashionable attire, and she felt a sense of superiority rise in her chest. But this was just the beginning. Rachel, unaware of the storm she was about to create, approached him with a practiced smile. "You've been nursing that drink for a while, sir," she said, her tone sharp but seemingly polite. "Maybe you'd be more comfortable at the bar. We're expecting a few reserved parties at this table." The words hung in the air like a tension-filled chord, vibrating between them. He looked up at her, his face calm, but his eyes spoke volumes, something deeper, something unspoken that made the air feel a little colder. What she didn't know, what no one could have known in that moment, was that this was no ordinary customer. This wasn't just a man in a simple polo shirt. This was Clint Eastwood, the legendary actor and director, the man whose very presence commanded respect without uttering a single word. Have you ever looked at someone and instantly decided who they were, only to have everything you thought shattered in an instant? Rachel's smirk faltered slightly, but she pushed forward. "I'm just trying to make sure you're comfortable, sir." But Clint's response was slow and deliberate. "I'm comfortable right here, partner," he said, his voice low and steady. The kind of calm that made you wonder if he'd seen it all before, and knew just how to respond to life's smallest provocations. Rachel's eyes narrowed as she tried to maintain control. "Well, you see, this table is reserved for our more important guests," she said, the words slipping out like a thinly veiled insult. "Perhaps someone more deserving of this space." The room seemed to quiet, the gentle buzz of conversation dropping just enough for those seated nearby to catch snippets of the exchange. The weight of her words hung there, suspended in the air like a single raindrop, waiting to fall. As she stood there, staring down at him, the realization hit like a soft, almost imperceptible breeze. Her judgment, her arrogance. Perhaps it wasn't as valid as she thought. The man before her was calm, unwavering. Yet the air around him had shifted. Suddenly, it was as if everything about her world had tilted, ever so slightly. "Who is this man?" she wondered, but dared not ask. And then, in a moment that seemed to stretch forever, Clint leaned back in his seat, his half-smile still lingering at the corners of his mouth. He had seen her type before, the ones who thought their way was the only way. The ones who couldn't see beyond their own narrow lens of the world. "What if I told you everything you've ever known about status and respect is about to be challenged?" The room was quiet now, save for the occasional clink of glass or the faint rustle of linen napkins. Rachel stood frozen, the tip of her pen trembling slightly as she scribbled a note on her order pad. She had made her point, or so she thought. But deep down, beneath the surface of her practiced smile, something was shifting. Her mind raced, replaying the moment she had approached Clint, as if her words had echoed louder than she intended. "You don't belong here," she'd said, more to herself than him in that moment. "But who are you, really?" she thought. The man in front of her, he didn't match the glossy, polished patrons around her. He was the kind of person who seemed to exist outside the current trend. untethered to the expectations of others. There was something almost ancient about him. His calm, deliberate movements were a stark contrast to the chaos around him. His eyes, though kind, carried the weight of untold stories, each glance a quiet reminder that some things were built to last, unshaken by time or circumstance. As she waited for him to respond, Rachel felt the first crack in her confidence. She'd been trained for this. She knew how to handle difficult customers. But there was something different about him. The steady gaze he gave her made her feel like she was being measured, not by the clothes she wore or the name on her badge, but by something far deeper. What if this man knows more about respect than I ever will? She shook the thought away. Focus, Rachel. Keep it together. The silence stretched, thickening the air around them. The tension between them, like a tight rope pulled taut, made Rachel uncomfortable. But she refused to back down. She had already made her judgment. He was just another old man, clinging to a simpler time. He didn't belong in the world she was building around herself. Then, Clint spoke again. You might want to check your social media partner, he said, his voice low but full of authority. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Her thoughts froze as she instinctively glanced at her phone. She had seen it before, business magnates, influencers, and celebrities becoming a part of the digital world. But this was different. The steady voice, the calm demeanor, his presence was unsettling. Rachel turned away, pretending to be more focused on the tablet in her hand. But beneath her breath, she cursed herself. Why does he make me feel so small? A sudden, involuntary shiver ran down her spine. She looked around the restaurant. The glimmering chandeliers above, the gleaming plates, the laughter echoing from the socialites who never seemed to worry about their next meal. It all felt so distant now. The reality of the place, the exclusivity, felt far more fragile than it ever had before. Clint Eastwood was still there. He hadn't moved. His gaze followed her as she busied herself. The realization sank in slowly like the fading hum of an old radio after the last note of a song had played. What does he see in me? A sudden warmth spread across Rachel's cheeks as she tried to shake the unease off. She had been trained to take charge, to control the room. But this man, this legend, he was making her feel like she had no power at all. As she moved to speak again, she couldn't shake the sensation that she was out of her depth. Does he see through me? Her lips parted, but the words seemed caught in her throat. The room was now unnervingly quiet. The once vibrant clink of glasses was barely heard now. Even the overhead lights seemed to flicker with a quiet intensity. Rachel felt exposed, not because of her position, but because of what Clint was slowly revealing without saying a word. You know, Clint continued, his voice unhurried but filled with a knowing wisdom. In my day, we didn't need to look the part to be the part. He sipped his whiskey, the amber liquid swirling in his glass. People respected you for who you were, not what you wore. Her heart skipped a beat. Did he just say what I think he said? The table felt further away now. Rachel's hand was trembling. The words she had said just moments ago, this isn't some diner off the highway. This is a prestigious establishment. They all seemed meaningless now. The judgment, the harshness, it didn't matter. But it wasn't just about that. It was something deeper, something rooted in the quiet, disarming power Clint had over the moment. The way he could stand there, not shouting, not retaliating, but with such quiet dignity that it left her with nothing to say. You might want to count again, partner, he said softly, each word deliberate, each syllable slow and full of weight. The tension in the room shifted again, and Rachel's mind raced. Why am I feeling so small? What does he want from me? The harshness in her chest softened just slightly as she watched him. In his eyes she could see it, a subtle, unspoken lesson, and for the first time she wondered if she had misjudged him. Maybe it's not about him, maybe it's about me. But the question still echoed. Do I have what it takes to admit I was wrong? The silence stretched on, hanging heavy in the air like the last notes of a song that had just come to an end. Rachel stood there, her breath caught in her chest, her mind still racing through everything that had just happened. She had tried to control the situation, tried to push this man, this stranger in a simple polo shirt, out of her way. But now, the room felt different. The air had thickened with a quiet tension that she couldn't ignore. The faint hum of the lights above, a soft flicker of the chandelier, felt almost like a warning. She swallowed hard, trying to steady herself. The moment felt suspended in time, as though the universe itself was holding its breath. Clint's calm gaze remained fixed on her, unblinking, almost as if he could see right through her. He wasn't just another customer. She realized now that he had been quietly studying her this whole time, each word she said, every subtle movement. It wasn't just about a seat at the table anymore. It was about respect, dignity, and something much bigger that she had failed to grasp. "You've made a mistake." Clint's voice was low, deliberate, carrying a weight that seemed to echo through the stillness of the room. Rachel's heart skipped. She could feel the blood drain from her face, a tight knot forming in her stomach. Did he just say that? The words reverberated in her mind, and she took a step back, instinctively, as if the space between them could somehow lessen the impact of what was unfolding. She had no idea what to do, what to say. She had underestimated him, and now the truth was about to unfold in front of her. The sound of her name being called, Clint's voice was steady, no hint of anger, pulled her back to the moment. "Rachel," he repeated, his gaze unwavering. "I think it's time you understand who you're talking to." And then, like a switch had been flipped, everything changed. A soft chuckle escaped from Clint's lips, a knowing sound that carried through the restaurant, making the hairs on Rachel's arms stand up. "This is it," she thought. "This is where I learned just how much I don't know." Rachel glanced down at her hands, her palms suddenly clammy, her breath shallow. She could feel her world beginning to tilt, her own sense of control slipping through her fingers like sand. The reality of the situation began to seep in, slowly, layer by layer, until it was inescapable. "I've been coming here every Friday for the past 6 months, Clint continued, his voice now not just calm, but filled with a quiet authority that made Rachel's heart beat faster. "I sit at the same table, order the same whiskey. And you? You've never noticed." The words hit her like a wave crashing against the shore. What was he saying? She glanced at Clint's face, his familiar, weathered features now illuminated by the soft glow of the dim restaurant lights. It can't be. But it was. It was him. Clint Eastwood, the man she had been dismissing, judging without even knowing who he was. The realization struck her like a cold wind. "I've been treating a legend like an ordinary man," she thought. The guilt was almost unbearable, rising in her chest like a heavy weight she couldn't shake. How could I have been so blind? Her mind flickered back to earlier when she had looked at Clint, dismissing him as just another unfashionable customer. How easily she had let her assumptions take hold of her, how quickly she had labeled him. What had I missed? She wondered. The lights above flickered again, as though they too were reflecting her inner turmoil. The hum of the room, the quiet murmur of the guests, everything felt far away now. Rachel stood motionless, as if time had slowed down around her. It was as though the universe itself had paused, waiting for her to acknowledge the gravity of what she had just done. She could feel the eyes of the room on her now. The older couple at the table next to her. The busboy, Miguel, standing silently nearby. The flight attendants who had been watching quietly. She was surrounded by silent witnesses. But it wasn't them who mattered. It was Clint. He had seen through her facade, exposed the very core of her arrogance and pride. Clint's voice, calm yet commanding, brought her back to reality. "You see, Rachel," he said slowly, "I bought this place 6 months ago. I didn't buy it for the status. I didn't buy it for the glamour. I bought it because, for 50 years, this restaurant has represented something real, something true, something more than what you see." A sharp intake of breath caught in Rachel's throat as the weight of his words settled in. "He owns this place?" The shock was overwhelming, a flood of realization washing over her, as if the floor beneath her feet had suddenly vanished. Clint continued, his eyes locking onto hers, unwavering. "This place isn't about appearances. It's about respect, and you've lost sight of that. You've judged me based on my clothes, my age, my lack of luxury. But you've forgotten the one thing that matters." The quiet murmur around the room ceased entirely. Rachel felt the eyes of everyone around her, some with sympathy, some with quiet judgment, but all of them waiting for her response. She had no words. What could she possibly say? She had been caught in her own arrogance, her own narrow view of the world, and now she was standing in front of someone who represented everything she had missed. Clint smiled faintly, almost as if he understood the turmoil she was experiencing. "Real class," he said, his voice softening just slightly, "isn't about designer labels. It's about dignity, respect, and treating everyone like they matter." As the last of his words settled into the room, Rachel felt something shift within her. For the first time, she wasn't just hearing the words, she was feeling them. In that quiet moment, in the midst of the tension, she understood. A soft, slow realization washed over her, and she looked down at her hands once again. What have I been missing? She wondered. What else was there to learn? The truth, as Clint Eastwood had just shown her, wasn't something she could buy or wear. It was something she had to earn, day by day, in how she treated others. And just like that, the room seemed to exhale with her. Time resumed its pace, the lights above no longer flickering. Everything felt clearer now. The harsh judgment, the misguided beliefs, they were all falling away piece by piece as she started to see the bigger picture. The one Clint had been trying to show her all along. The room, once thick with tension, now seemed to breathe in unison, as if the air had been waiting for this moment to unfold. Clint Eastwood, the legendary actor, the director who had made Hollywood history, sat calmly at his table, his hands resting gently on the edges of his whiskey glass. His eyes no longer held the steel-like gaze of someone accustomed to battles, but instead there was a softness, a quiet understanding of the one he had just imparted. Rachel stood frozen, her emotions swirling in a storm of shame, confusion, and something deeper. Had she really been that blind? The realization hit her in waves. She had thought she knew what mattered. She had been so certain of what defined worth and success. And yet, here she was, face to face with someone who had built a legacy not on labels or luxury, but on respect, humility, and a core of integrity that she had failed to recognize. Outside, the night seemed to carry on, but inside the restaurant, time had momentarily stood still. The quiet murmur of voices, the clinking of glasses, the soft shuffle of waitstaff moving between tables, everything had become background noise to the stillness that enveloped Rachel. It was as if she could hear her own heartbeat thumping louder, each beat pulling her deeper into her self-reflection. She closed her eyes briefly, trying to make sense of the whirlwind inside her. How could I have missed it? The words echoed in her mind. The way Clint had patiently shown her the truth, not with anger, but with an unshakable calm that radiated strength. It made her question everything she had assumed, everything she had judged. Her thoughts began to fragment, piecing together a new understanding that was both humbling and empowering. Clint looked up at her, his smile not arrogant or condescending, but filled with a quiet acknowledgement of her growth. "You've got what it takes, Rachel," he said simply, his voice carrying the wisdom of someone who had seen life unfold in ways that few could imagine. "It's all about the choices we make." Rachel took a deep breath, standing a little taller. The uncertainty in her chest was still there, but it was no longer overwhelming. It was the kind of uncertainty that pushed you to move forward, to make the right choices. As she turned to walk back to her duties, she glanced back at Clint one last time. There was something in his eyes, a subtle nod of approval, that told her more than any words ever could. She knew now that real class, real success, was not about being seen or admired. It was about how you saw others, how you treated them, and how you lived your life in a way that left an impact. The evening continued on, the restaurant humming with life, but something inside Rachel had changed. It was as if the flickering light above had found its steady glow, and she knew that this lesson, this moment, would stay with her long after the dinner rush ended. The story of Clint Eastwood and the waitress Rachel offers a valuable lesson about respect and the worth of every individual. No matter our social standing, we all deserve to be treated with dignity and kindness. As Clint pointed out, true luxury isn't about clothes or fame, but about how we treat others. We never know who might be standing before us, and sometimes those with simple appearances hold the deepest values. In life, remember that every person, whether famous or unknown, deserves respect and love. Don't let arrogance or prejudice stop you from recognizing the true beauty in those around you. The more we treat others well, the more we gain positive values and happiness in our lives. If you've enjoyed this story, found the journey as inspiring as I have, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. It helps more than you think, and it lets us know we're on the right path together. And if you'd like to hear more powerful stories like this one, be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notifications. This way, you won't miss any of the incredible moments we have lined up. Thank you for being part of this journey. Clint looked up at her, his smile not arrogant or condescending, but filled with a quiet acknowledgement of her growth. "You've got what it takes, Rachel," he said simply, his voice carrying the wisdom of someone who had seen life unfold in ways that few could imagine. "It's all about the choices we make." Rachel took a deep breath, standing a little taller. The uncertainty in her chest was still there, but it was no longer overwhelming. It was the kind of uncertainty that pushed you to move forward, to make the right choices. As she turned to walk back to her duties, she glanced back at Clint one last time. There was something in his eyes, a subtle nod of approval, that told her more than any words ever could. She knew now that real class, real success was not about being seen or admired. It was about how you saw others, how you treated them, and how you lived your life in a way that left an impact. The evening continued on, the restaurant humming with life, but something inside Rachel had changed. It was as if the flickering light above had found its steady glow, and she knew that this lesson, this moment, would stay with her long after the dinner rush ended. The story of Clint Eastwood and the waitress Rachel offers a valuable lesson about respect and the worth of every individual. No matter our social standing, we all deserve to be treated with dignity and kindness. As Clint pointed out, true luxury isn't about clothes or fame, but about how we treat others. We never know who might be standing before us, and sometimes those with simple appearances hold the deepest values. In life, remember that every person, whether famous or unknown, deserves respect and love. Don't let arrogance or prejudice stop you from recognizing the true beauty in those around you. The more we treat others well, the more we gain positive values and happiness in our lives. If you've enjoyed this story, found the journey as inspiring as I have, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. It helps more than you think, and it lets us know we're on the right path together. And if you'd like to hear more powerful stories like this one, be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notifications. This way, you won't miss any of the incredible moments we have lined up. Thank you for being part of this journey. Clint looked up at her, his smile not arrogant or condescending, but filled with a quiet acknowledgement of her growth. "You've got what it takes, Rachel," he said simply, his voice carrying the wisdom of someone who had seen life unfold in ways that few could imagine. "It's all about the choices we make." Rachel took a deep breath, standing a little taller. The uncertainty in her chest was still there, but it was no longer overwhelming. It was the kind of uncertainty that pushed you to move forward, to make the right choices. As she turned to walk back to her duties, she glanced back at Clint one last time. There was something in his eyes, a subtle nod of approval, that told her more than any words ever could. She knew now that real class, real success was not about being seen or admired. It was about how you saw others, how you treated them, and how you lived your life in a way that left an impact. The evening continued on, the restaurant humming with life, but something inside Rachel had changed. It was as if the flickering light above had found its steady glow, and she knew that this lesson, this moment, would stay with her long after the dinner rush ended. The story of Clint Eastwood and the waitress Rachel offers a valuable lesson about respect and the worth of every individual. No matter our social standing, we all deserve to be treated with dignity and kindness. As Clint pointed out, true luxury isn't about clothes or fame, but about how we treat others. We never know who might be standing before us, and sometimes those with simple appearances hold the deepest values. In life, remember that every person, whether famous or unknown, deserves respect and love. Don't let arrogance or prejudice stop you from recognizing the true beauty in those around you. The more we treat others well, the more we gain positive values and happiness in our lives. If you've enjoyed this story, found the journey as inspiring as I have, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. It helps more than you think, and it lets us know we're on the right path together. And if you'd like to hear more powerful stories like this one, be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notifications. This way, you won't miss any of the incredible moments we have lined up. Thank you for being part of this journey.